Greetings, friends and neighbors, and welcome to episode 25 of the Community Solutions Podcast, coming to you from the students, faculty, staff, and community partners affiliated with the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the Indiana University Fairbanks School of Public Health in Indianapolis. I'm Jack Turman Jr., your host for the podcast and a member of the faculty in this great department. This episode continues our conversation about global poverty reduction strategies as we listen to our students Catherine and Carla discuss the autobiography, Banker to the Poor, Microlending and the Battle Against World Poverty by Dr. Mohammed Yunus. This conversation explores how Dr. Yunus, a Nobel Prize recipient, created the Grameen Bank and its microcredit actions to help those living in extreme poverty. I believe one key point in the story of Dr. Yunus is that he went to villagers to learn of their needs. As we discussed in the last episode, it is critical to spend time with people living in poverty and learn from them, their needs and their assets and their skills, and build from there with them as partners. Dr. Yunus was also critical in showing the importance of loaning funds to women in poverty. He demonstrated that this leads to community change more quickly than loaning to men, because women work to improve the welfare of themselves, children, and men of a community. Finally, I love Dr. Yunus's assessment of individuals living in poverty. He passionately advocated that these individuals are skilled, strong, and possess great value to help advance our societies. Just think what kind of world we would have if we all adopted this mindset towards individuals living in poverty. We would all be better off. So just as I said last week, let's start having a conversation about the need to address global poverty in ways that honor and sustain the well-being of all those impacted.
Hello, my name is Carla Armenta.
And my name is Catherine Sterling.
We are here today to talk about the autobiography entitled Banker to the Poor, Microlending and the Battle Against World Poverty by Mohammed Yunus. Join us as we learn about how and why Mohammed Yunus established the Grameen Bank and the obstacles he faced, how the bank has succeeded, and how microcredit and other market-based programs can improve the lives of the poor.
For those of you unfamiliar with Mohammed Yunus, he's an entrepreneur, economist, civil leader, and Nobel Peace Prize recipient from Bangladesh. Yunus was born in 1940 to a family of 14 children, was influenced by his compassionate and kind mother, and was a passionate and creative Boy Scout.
As a natural leader, Yunus later discovered his interests in economics, teaching, and social reform. After graduating from college, Yunus was recognized as a Fulbright Scholar in 1965 and worked on his PhD at Vanderbilt University. In 1971, Yunus returned to Bangladesh to help build the country, became head of the economics department at Chittagong University, and studied the famine and economies of nearby villages.
It's at this point that Yunus learned from the impoverished village craftsmen about what they actually needed. What they needed was credit. The 42 villagers of Jobra only needed $27 to buy their raw materials, but could not afford the interest rates. Yunus decided to loan the villagers the money himself, interest-free.
That's great. In 1976, Yunus approached one of the largest banks in Bangladesh, Janata Bank, and pitched the idea of lending small loans to the very poor. The bank did not agree, but after some negotiation and offering to personally guarantee the loans, the bank managers agreed, requiring Yunus to act as an intermediary, filling out the necessary paperwork for each loan.
Why did Yunus think the poor would repay these unsecured loans? It must have taken a lot of courage and trust to do this.
The poor know this credit is their only opportunity to break out of poverty, Yunus says. If they fall afoul of this one loan, they will have lost their one and only chance to get out of the rut. Yunus's loan help them break the cycle of poverty and change their lives forever.
This evolved to become the Grameen Bank, meaning Bank of the Village.
Yes, founded on the belief that credit is a fundamental human right, Yunus's solution to world poverty is exceptionally simple. Loan poor people money on terms that are suitable to them, teach them a few sound financial principles, and they will help themselves.
Yunus learned how to be a banker by doing the opposite of what traditional banks did, particularly making small loans to the poor, women, and people with no credit. He shared, "I did not know anything about how to run a bank for the poor, so I had to learn from scratch."
That's interesting. Yunus also loaned money almost exclusively to women because he found that extending credit to them created more change more quickly than lending money to men. Not only do women constitute the majority of the poor, the underemployed, and the economically and socially disadvantaged, he explains, but they more readily and successfully improve the welfare of both children and men.
Since the late 1970s, Yunus's loan programs have constantly changed and evolved to meet the needs of the poor. In 1977, Yunus's loan program expanded beyond Joburg into Dangal, followed by the first official branch of the Grameen Bank opening 2 years later.
Yunus reconstructed the Grameen Bank into an independent institution, growing even more quickly and adding 100 branches a year. It started offering different kinds of loans and expanded into other poor countries including Malaysia, the Philippines, India, Nepal, and Vietnam.
That's right. Grameen even started operations in the U.S. With President Bill Clinton's support, Grameen began a program in Arkansas. Similar programs followed in South Dakota, Oklahoma, and Illinois. Yunus also started other anti-poverty programs involving fish farming, textile production, and cellular phones.
In January 2008, Yunus founded Grameen America, a 501c3 nonprofit microfinance organization dedicated to helping entrepreneurial women who live in poverty build small businesses to enable financial mobility. The organization offers microloans, training, and support to transform communities and fight poverty in the United States. Since opening, Grameen America has disbursed over $1.08 billion in microloans to more than 113,000 women members.
Today, more than 250 institutions in nearly 100 countries operate microcredit programs based on the Grameen methodology, placing Grameen at the forefront of a growing world movement toward eradicating poverty through microlending.
Indeed, the Grameen Bank became a model for community development. To me, changing the quality of life of the bottom 50% of the population is the essence of development, he shares. I have always believed that the elimination of poverty from the world is a matter of will.
With successes came struggles and challenges as well. To succeed in Bangladesh, as Yunus says, in many ways they had to struggle against their culture. They had to create a counterculture that valued women's economic contribution, rewarded hard work, and punished corrupt practices. The Grameen Bank received a great deal of criticism for going against traditional methods of poverty alleviation.
Correct. Yunus firmly believed that all human beings have an innate skill that he called the survival skill. He says, "The fact that the poor are alive is clear proof of their ability." Yunus recognized that providing skills training for the poor was not the only way to help the poor move up the economic ladder. If you go into the real world, he says, you cannot miss seeing that the poor are poor not because they are untrained or illiterate, but because they cannot retain the returns of their labor. They have no control over capital, and it is the ability to control capital that gives people the power to rise out of poverty.
Despite these obstacles, the Grameen Bank grew to become an impressive anti-poverty program. What began as a $27 loan grew to become Grameen Bank with almost 2,000 branches, loaning $3.9 billion and extending credit to more than 2.6 million people.
This is a perfect example of how one person's efforts can have a huge impact. All of these accomplishments seemed highly unlikely in 1976, but Yunus persisted and fought through all odds to make the Grameen Bank a reality. Yunus believes that before we actually translate something into reality, we must be able to dream about it. He says, any socioeconomic dream is nothing but the first step in the process of mapping the course to our destination.
Yunus imagines a world free from poverty by 2050. We challenge you to consider poverty in your community. Do the most disadvantaged people in your community have access to the basic needs of life, like fair housing, education, food security, and job placement? What can you do to help? How can you inspire others in your community to help? Share your thoughts with us on Facebook or Twitter at SBS_FSPH.
Thank you for listening and joining us today. Please be sure to share today's podcast with your friends, co-workers, and loved ones, and subscribe to the Community Solutions podcast if you haven't done so already.